You've done the work. The late nights, the extra projects, the quiet mastery of your craft. Your resume tells a story of competence and reliability. People come to you when they need something done well. And yet, there are moments, sometimes entire seasons, when the next step feels strangely out of reach. Not because the door is closed from the outside, because something on the inside has quietly closed it first. That something has a name. Mental barriers. In a professional environment where skills can be learned and effort can be measured, these invisible structures have become the primary reason talented people remain stuck while others, sometimes less qualified, move ahead. The decisive factor is no longer what you know or how hard you work. It is whether you can recognize and step through the patterns your own mind has built around you. This is not about working harder on the outside. It is about working more honestly on the inside. Mental barriers rarely announce themselves as limitations. They present as simple statements of fact. I'm not the kind of person who speaks up in those meetings. Leadership at that level requires a confidence I don't naturally have. If I push for what I deserve, I'll be seen as difficult. These are not observations of reality. They are conclusions drawn from older experiences and then treated as permanent conditions. Cognitive patterns keep the conclusions alive by directing attention toward confirming evidence and away from anything that might challenge them. Emotional blocks create physical resistance. The tight throat before a crucial conversation, the sudden fatigue when it's time to advocate. Identity stories run deepest, shaping not just what you believe you can do, but who you believe you are allowed to become. Over time, these stories stop feeling like stories. They start to feel like the only accurate description of your professional identity. One story captures this experience with particular clarity. It belongs to a composite of professionals, a woman in her late 30s, technically excellent, respected by her peers, and repeatedly described as almost ready for senior roles. She prepared for every opportunity with characteristic thoroughness. Yet, whenever visibility increased, an older voice inside her activated. Don't stand out too much. People who look like you, or come from where you come from, eventually get reminded of their place. She didn't fail dramatically. She simply performed at 70% of her actual capacity in the moments that mattered most. The promotion went to someone else. The raise was smaller than it could have been. The recognition stayed internal. She told herself it was timing or office politics. Yet, a part of her knew the real variable had been her own diminished presence. Over time, the pattern became a quiet tax on her energy and her sense of what was possible. She worked harder to compensate, which only reinforced the exhaustion without shifting the underlying constraint. These barriers persist because they were never designed to be examined. They formed as adaptations, ways of staying safe, liked, or effective in environments where certain behaviors carried risk. The nervous system encoded them as wisdom. Years later, in different rooms with different stakes, the same encoding continues to fire. What once kept you safe now keeps you small. The cost is rarely one catastrophic event. It is the accumulation of near misses, the conversation you softened, the idea you didn't defend, the boundary you didn't set, the compensation conversation you delayed one more quarter. Each one feels small, but together they create a career that looks successful from the outside, while feeling constrained from within. Steady income that never quite reflects your contribution, chronic low-level stress that follows you into evenings and weekends, and the occasional private question of whether this is as far as someone like you is meant to go. These are not failures of effort. They are the predictable outcome of unexamined internal architecture. This audiobook is an invitation to change that trajectory from the inside out. Across the chapters ahead, you will learn to map your own particular barriers with precision, rather than assuming they match someone else's generic advice. You will practice diagnostic questions that reveal when a belief is operating as a barrier instead of a useful guide. You will develop techniques to interrupt the old patterns in the moment they arise, and to install new ones that reflect the professional reality you actually inhabit now. Resilience becomes something you build deliberately, instead of hoping it appears under pressure. Your sense of possibility widens as the old identity stories lose their exclusive claim on your self-definition. You begin to see options that were always present, but previously invisible to the old way of seeing. And every insight is connected directly to action, specific, repeatable behaviors that turn internal shifts into external results you can track. More effective presence in meetings, clearer requests, greater willingness to be seen, and the compounding confidence that comes from keeping promises to yourself. None of this requires becoming someone you are not. It requires becoming more fully available to the capabilities you already possess. The barriers have been using your energy against your own goals. When they loosen, that energy returns to you. If you are ready to examine what has been operating beneath your professional efforts, if you are willing to do the patient, grounded work of dismantling what no longer serves, then stay with this process. Commit to listening not just with your ears, but with your willingness to see yourself clearly. The real work and the real freedom begins now. Chapter 1. The Diagnosis. Mapping the mental barriers in your professional life. You may have sensed them for years without having clear words for what they were. Those moments when you knew your contribution could matter more, when the next level of responsibility felt within reach, and yet, something inside you held back. That something is not a lack of skill or drive. It is a set of mental barriers, recurring internal patterns that quietly shape what you attempt, how you speak, and what you allow yourself to claim in your professional life. These barriers operate below the level of conscious strategy. They feel like simple facts about the situation or about you. In reality, they are old conclusions that have hardened into default settings. High achievers tend to encounter the same handful of patterns again and again. The imposter pattern whispers that your successes are provisional, that sooner or later someone will notice you are not quite as capable as your results suggest. Fear of visibility keeps you from putting your perspective forward in rooms where it could influence outcomes. Fear of failure turns every new initiative into a private test you would rather avoid than risk failing in public. Perfectionism insists that the work is never ready, so you revise, refine, and delay until momentum is lost. Scarcity mindset treats recognition, resources, and opportunity as limited quantities that must be protected rather than expanded. Comparison measures your current chapter against someone else's highlight reel and finds you wanting. And underneath many of these sits the fixed identity story. I'm not that kind of person. Not the strategic thinker. Not the one who negotiates openly. Not comfortable being visible. Not the leader others look to first. These stories do not feel like stories. They feel like accurate descriptions of your nature. These patterns form through repetition and protection. Early in your career, or even earlier in life, certain behaviors carried social or professional risk. Speaking up too directly may have been met with subtle correction. Standing out may have triggered questions about whether you were getting above yourself. Your nervous system registered those moments as data and built a response pattern around them. Over time, the pattern strengthened through use. Every time you held back and the meeting still ended without disaster, the pathway grew more automatic. Confirmation bias did the rest. You began to notice evidence that supported the old conclusion and overlooked or explained away evidence that contradicted it. Eventually, the barrier stopped feeling like a choice you were making. It started to feel like reality itself. This is simply how I operate. That sentence is where the barrier does its most effective work. Consider the experience of a mid-career operations director named Maya. Maya was known for delivering complex projects on time and keeping teams aligned under pressure. In strategy sessions, she offered precise operational input, but rarely challenged the broader direction or proposed alternative approaches. She told herself she was being supportive by staying in her lane. Beneath that explanation ran a quieter story. I'm the one who executes well. Vision and big bets belong to other people. She watched colleagues with less delivery discipline move into roles with greater scope. She felt the frustration, but named it as politics or timing. One afternoon, after a meeting in which she had again withheld a structural insight that later proved relevant, she asked herself a single question while walking back to her desk. What story about myself did I just obey? The answer arrived with unusual clarity. I obeyed the story that people who look and sound like me do not set direction. Naming it did not instantly dissolve the hesitation. Rather, it gave her a place to stand outside the pattern. She began to notice how that single story had influenced which meetings she prepared for most carefully, how she framed her own achievements in reviews, and which opportunities she quietly declined before anyone could offer them. 6 months later, she had initiated 2 strategic conversations that changed the trajectory of a key product area. The clarity did not remove all internal resistance. It made the resistance visible and therefore workable. The cost of leaving these barriers unexamined shows up in small, compounding ways rather than one dramatic failure. Professionally, you miss the assignments that would stretch your capabilities and build new evidence of what you can handle. You contribute less than you are capable of in meetings where your perspective could shift outcomes for the whole team. Recognition and compensation conversations happen less often because the internal story keeps you from making a clear case. Over years, the gap between your actual contribution and the credit you receive widens. Personally, the cost appears as a steady drain on energy. Managing the difference between what you know you could offer and what you actually offer requires constant internal negotiation. That negotiation is exhausting. It follows you into evenings and weekends. It reduces the presence you bring to people who matter outside work. And there is the quieter form of regret, the accumulating sense that you have been moving through your career with an invisible governor on your own potential. Now, we move from understanding to direct diagnosis. You do not need elaborate frameworks. You need a few minutes of honest attention and a willingness to notice what has been operating in the background. Here is a simple mental inventory you can begin today. Over the next 3 days, pay attention to the moments just before you step into any professional situation that carries weight. such as a presentation, a difficult conversation, a meeting where your view differs from the majority, or even the act of sending an email that asks for resources or visibility. Before you begin, pause for 10 seconds and ask yourself these 3 questions. Notice what surfaces without forcing an answer. What am I afraid might happen if I show up fully in this moment? What story about myself or about people like me is running quietly underneath? If I acted from the belief that my perspective matters and that I am capable of handling the outcome, what would I do differently in the next few minutes? You are not trying to change anything yet. You are simply collecting data. You might notice the same phrase appearing across very different situations. You might feel a familiar tightening in your chest or a sudden urge to prepare one more slide when a particular story activates. That physical signal is useful information. It shows where the barrier carries emotional weight. After 3 days, look at what you have gathered. Which of the patterns we discussed earlier, imposter, visibility, failure, perfectionism, scarcity, comparison, or fixed identity, appears most frequently? That pattern is likely your primary barrier right now. It is the one that, if even partially loosened, would return the largest amount of energy to your professional life. You may discover 2 or 3 that reinforce each other. That is common. The purpose of this chapter is not to remove them all at once. It is to bring them into view. Because once a barrier can be named and located in specific situations, it loses some of its power to run your choices in the dark. Awareness itself is the first and most important breakthrough. The moment you can clearly name the pattern that has been shaping your professional decisions without your full consent, something fundamental has already shifted. You are no longer moving forward with an invisible hand on the brake. You are beginning to see the road clearly enough to choose how you want to drive. Chapter 2: The Deconstruction, Challenging and Dismantling Limiting Beliefs. You named the barriers in the last chapter. You saw the patterns that have been quietly steering your professional choices. Naming them was essential. It brought what had been operating in the shadows into the light. But awareness alone does not loosen their grip. The next step is deconstruction, the deliberate, repeatable work of examining a limiting belief, testing its accuracy, and weakening its hold through evidence and small actions. This is where the real shift begins. You move from being shaped by an old story to becoming the author of a more accurate one. Most limiting beliefs in professional life share a similar structure. They are absolute statements that feel protective or realistic, such as, "I'm not strategic enough to contribute at that level. If I ask for what I deserve, I'll be seen as difficult. My value comes from working harder than everyone else." These statements are rarely examined once they take root. They sit in the background and direct your attention, your energy, and your willingness to take professional risks. Deconstruction begins with a simple but powerful question. Is this belief actually true, or has it simply gone unchallenged for a long time? The process has 3 clear steps you can apply to any belief that surfaced during your diagnosis work. First, question its accuracy with precision. Vague doubt does not weaken a belief. Specific inquiry does. When the belief appears, pause and ask, "What exactly am I claiming here? What would have to be true for this statement to hold?" You might discover the belief is narrower than it first appeared. The statement, "I'm not strategic," often hides a more specific claim. I don't speak up with big picture ideas in meetings where senior leaders are present. That narrower version is easier to examine. Second, actively gather disconfirming evidence. Your mind has been collecting proof that supports the old belief for years. You must deliberately look for the opposite. Think back across your career. When have you influenced direction, even in small ways? When have you offered an idea that changed how a project or decision unfolded? When have you received feedback that contradicted the belief? Write these moments down. Do not accept the first answer that says, "That doesn't count." Push for specifics. One project where your operational insight shaped a strategic pivot is evidence. A single conversation where your question redirected a team's approach is evidence. These moments do not erase the belief overnight, but they begin to create cracks in its foundation. Third, run small behavioral experiments. Beliefs weaken most effectively when they are tested against reality, rather than argued with in your head. Choose one low-risk action that directly challenges the belief. If the belief is, "I'm not the kind of person who speaks up in strategic discussions," your experiment might be to prepare one specific observation or question in advance and offer it in the next meeting where the stakes feel manageable. If the belief is, "Asking for resources will make me seem difficult," your experiment might be to make one clear, evidence-based request this week and notice what actually happens. The experiment does not need to succeed in the way you hope. It needs to be completed so you can collect fresh data about what is true now, not what felt true years ago. Precise reframing gives these steps lasting power. Generic positive statements rarely stick because they lack roots in your actual experience. A useful reframe is specific, evidence-based, and tied to action. Instead of, "I am strategic," you might arrive at, "When I bring my attention to how details connect to larger goals, I can influence direction, and I have done so before." Instead of, "I'm not someone who asks for more," you might land on, "I can make clear requests grounded in the value I create, and I have the right to do so." The new statement feels true because it is built from your own history and points toward a next step you can actually take. One story shows how this process works in practice. It belongs to a senior analyst in a large financial services firm who had carried the belief for nearly a decade that, "My role is to execute, not to shape decisions. People in my position don't get invited into those conversations." The belief had formed early when a manager told her to focus on delivery and leave strategy to others. She had repeated it internally through multiple role changes. During her diagnosis work, she named it clearly. Then she began the deconstruction. She listed every instance in the past 5 years where her analysis had influenced a decision, even when she had not been in the room. She found more examples than she expected. She chose a small experiment. In her next project update, she would add one sentence about a strategic implication she saw in the data. The first time she did it, her manager paused and asked her to expand. Nothing dramatic happened, but the belief lost some of its certainty. Over the following months, she ran 3 more small experiments. Each one gave her new evidence. Eventually, she reframed the old story into something more accurate. "I bring analytical depth that can shape decisions when I choose to offer it." 6 months later, she was asked to join a cross-functional strategy group. The belief had not disappeared completely. It simply no longer dictated what she attempted. You can begin this work today. Here is a simple belief audit you can complete on paper or in your mind, with any limiting belief that feels active right now. First, Write the belief in its exact words as it appears in your mind. Second, list 3 specific pieces of evidence from your career that support it. Be honest. Third, list 3 specific pieces of evidence that challenge it. Dig. Look for moments you may have dismissed. Fourth, craft one more accurate, nuanced version of the belief that incorporates what you have found. Fifth, choose one small behavioral experiment you could run this week or next that would test the new version. You do not need to finish the audit in one sitting. You can return to it. The act of writing or speaking the steps out loud already begins to weaken the old pattern's automatic hold. This work is not about forcing yourself to believe something positive that feels false. It is about bringing the same rigor you apply to professional problems to the beliefs that have been running your career from the background. When a belief is examined, tested, and updated with evidence from your actual life, it loses its power to limit what you attempt. You begin to move with less internal friction. Opportunities that once felt closed start to feel like choices you can make. Beliefs are not facts. They are stories you have told yourself about yourself and the world of work. And stories can be rewritten when you bring honest attention and small, repeated actions to the task. Chapter 3: The Reprogramming. Rewiring your mind for unshakable confidence. You have named the barriers. You have begun to question and test the old beliefs that limited what you attempted. That work created space. Now, the work turns toward actively building what you want in its place. Your mind is not a fixed structure. Through focused attention and repetition, it can strengthen new patterns. Every time you deliberately direct your attention toward a more capable version of yourself, those pathways grow clearer and more automatic. The mind learns what it practices, whether you intend it or not. Reprogramming is the intentional practice of giving it better material to work with. 3 practical tools make this process concrete and effective. The first is vivid professional visualization and mental rehearsal. This is not vague daydreaming. It is a focused, sensory-rich practice of seeing and feeling yourself move through a specific professional situation with the qualities you want to strengthen. Choose one recurring challenge, such as a high-stakes meeting, a difficult conversation, or a presentation where you tend to hold back. Close your eyes for a few minutes and walk through it in detail. See the room. Notice the expressions on people's faces. Hear your own voice as it sounds when you are clear and grounded. Feel the steadiness in your body as you offer your perspective or make the ask. Run the scene 2 or 3 times, each time making small adjustments, so the outcome feels more aligned with the professional you are becoming. This practice does not guarantee the external result. It trains your nervous system to respond with greater calm and clarity when the moment actually arrives. The second tool is identity-level statements that feel true rather than forced. Generic affirmations often fail because they sit too far from your actual experience. Effective statements are specific, grounded in evidence you have already gathered, and written in present tense as descriptions of who you are becoming. After your deconstruction work, you may have evidence that you have influenced direction in the past or handled uncertainty with skill. Turn that evidence into a statement such as, "I bring clear thinking that helps teams move through complexity," or "I can make direct requests grounded in the value I create." Speak or write the statement once in the morning and once before a relevant situation. The goal is not to convince yourself of something you do not yet believe. It is to give your mind a precise alternative to the old story, so that over time, the new description begins to feel more natural than the old one. The third tool is deliberate curation of your mental inputs. Your mind absorbs what you feed it through reading, listening, and watching. Much of what passes through your day quietly reinforces old patterns. Quick scrolls that trigger comparison, podcasts that emphasize scarcity or constant hustle, conversations that normalize self-doubt. You can shift this without dramatic changes. Notice what you consume in the first 30 minutes of the day and the last 30 minutes before sleep. Replace one source that contracts your sense of possibility with one that expands it. This might mean following professionals who openly discuss their own growth, rather than only their finished successes. It might mean listening to one conversation that models calm authority instead of reactive urgency. Over weeks, these small shifts change the background material your mind has to work with. These tools become more powerful when you combine them into small daily practices that reinforce the professional identity you are building. You might begin the morning with 2 minutes of visualization focused on one key situation that day, followed by speaking your identity statement once out loud. In the evening, you might spend 5 minutes reviewing one input you chose, and one moment where you acted from the new story rather than the old one. The practices do not need to be long. They need to be consistent. Repetition is what allows the new patterns to take root. One story illustrates what becomes possible when these tools are used systematically. It comes from a team lead who experienced a significant setback when a major initiative she had championed was publicly criticized and scaled back. The experience triggered a sharp drop in confidence. She began to question whether she had the judgment to lead at that level. For several weeks, she avoided strategic conversations and second-guessed every recommendation. Then she began a deliberate reprogramming practice. Each morning, she spent 3 minutes visualizing herself in the next team meeting, speaking with calm clarity about risks and options. She crafted one identity statement grounded in her actual history. I see patterns others miss, and I can name them without apology. She also changed one input. She stopped consuming industry commentary that focused only on flawless wins and began listening to one short conversation each week from leaders who openly discussed recovery after missteps. After 6 weeks, the internal voice that had said, "You are not cut out for this," had lost much of its volume. She still felt caution, but she also felt a growing willingness to re-enter the conversations she had been avoiding. The setback had not disappeared from her record. Her relationship to it had changed. You can begin this work today with almost no extra time. This evening, before you sleep, choose one professional situation that matters to you in the coming week. Spend 2 minutes walking through it in your mind with the qualities you want to bring. Write one identity statement that feels like a slight stretch, but not a complete departure from what you know to be true about yourself. And notice the last piece of content you consumed before bed. Does it leave you more or less grounded in your own capability? Adjust one small thing if it does not serve the direction you want to move. Confidence is not something you have. It is something you build through deliberate mental work. Each time you direct your attention toward a clearer, steadier version of yourself, and repeat that focus through visualization, statements, and chosen inputs, you are actively shaping the mind that shows up in your professional life. The old patterns do not vanish overnight. They simply lose their exclusive claim on how you see what is possible. Chapter 4: The Fortification: Building Resilience to Withstand and Grow from Professional Setbacks. You have been learning to see the barriers clearly. You have practiced loosening old beliefs and strengthening new ways of seeing yourself. That inner work matters most when the external world pushes back. Setbacks arrive in every professional life. The rejected proposal, the critical feedback that lands harder than expected, the project that does not deliver the recognition you hoped for, or the opportunity that goes to someone else. Resilience is not the ability to avoid these moments. It is the capacity to recover faster and stronger each time they occur. It is the difference between being derailed for weeks and returning to clear action within days. This chapter is about building that capacity deliberately. Resilience begins with emotional regulation under pressure. When a setback lands, the nervous system often responds with a surge of disappointment, shame, or defensive anger. These reactions are normal. They become costly only when they take over your thinking for days. The first practical tool is simple labeling. When you feel the wave, pause and name what is happening in plain language, such as, "I am feeling sharp disappointment right now," or "Shame is present because this outcome touched an old story about my competence." Naming the emotion reduces its intensity. It creates a small gap between the feeling and the story your mind wants to attach to it. From that gap, you can choose your next response, instead of being carried by the first impulse. The second element is cognitive flexibility after rejection or failure. The mind often collapses a single outcome into a broad conclusion about your worth or future prospects. "This project failed, therefore I am not ready for larger responsibility." Or, "The feedback was harsh, therefore my contributions are not valued here." Cognitive flexibility means holding the specific facts of what happened while loosening the sweeping story. A useful question in the moment is, what is the smallest, most accurate description of this event? Another is, what part of this outcome was in my control and what part was not? These questions keep you from turning one data point into a permanent verdict. They also prepare you to extract learning rather than simply enduring pain. The third element is a post-setback recovery routine. Without structure, the mind tends to loop on what went wrong. A simple routine interrupts the loop and channels energy toward recovery and growth. When a setback occurs, give yourself a short window, often 24 to 48 hours, to feel the disappointment without immediately trying to fix or analyze it. Then move into a structured extraction process. Ask 3 questions in writing. What actually happened, separate from my interpretation? What did I learn about my approach, my assumptions, or my preparation? What will I do differently next time, even if the situation never repeats exactly? Finally, identify one small behavioral step you can take within the next 48 hours that moves you forward, however modestly. This might be a clarifying conversation, a revised plan for the next project, or simply returning to a daily practice that steadies you. The routine turns the setback from an emotional event into a training experience. One story shows how these elements work together in practice. It belongs to a product manager who led a high-visibility initiative that was canceled after significant investment. The decision came with public commentary that her team had not anticipated market shifts accurately enough. For the first week, she moved through her days in a fog of self-doubt and defensive replay. She avoided meetings where the project might be mentioned. Then, she began applying the recovery routine. She labeled the dominant emotion as humiliation mixed with grief for the work we had poured in. She wrote the smallest accurate description. The market data had shifted faster than the team's assumptions, and she had not pushed for an earlier pivot. She extracted 3 specific learnings about stakeholder communication and timing of risk flags. Her first small forward step was to schedule one conversation with a trusted colleague to debrief the decision without blame. Over the following months, she applied those learnings to 2 subsequent projects. One of them succeeded in ways the canceled initiative never could have. The setback had not disappeared from her record. It had become part of the evidence that she could recover, integrate hard feedback, and lead with greater precision. You can use these tools the next time rejection, criticism, or failure arrives. Begin with the pause and label. Name the emotion without adding the story. Then ask the 2 cognitive questions. What is the smallest accurate description, and what was actually in my control? Move into the recovery routine when the initial intensity has eased. Write the 3 extraction questions and answer them with as much specificity as you can manage. Choose one small forward action and complete it within 2 days. These steps do not remove the sting. They shorten the time you remain stuck and increase the likelihood that the experience adds to your capability rather than subtracting from it. The same tools apply whether the setback is large or small. A harsh performance comment, a lost client, or a missed promotion can all be processed through the same sequence. Over time, the routine becomes more automatic. You recover faster because your mind has practiced moving from reaction to learning to action. You also begin to carry a different relationship to difficulty. The old fear that a setback proves something permanent about you loses its grip. Setbacks are not proof of your limits. They are data about what happened under specific conditions and training for how you will respond the next time conditions are uncertain. The professional who builds this capacity does not become immune to disappointment. They become someone who can absorb it, learn from it, and keep moving with greater steadiness and clarity. That is the real fortification. Chapter 5. The Expansion. Embracing a growth mindset to transcend perceived professional limits. You have built steadiness through setbacks. You have practiced recovering faster and turning difficulty into data. That resilience creates a foundation. The next layer of the work is expansion, loosening the artificial ceilings you have placed on what you can become professionally. Many of these ceilings are not imposed by external reality. They are held in place by a fixed view of your own capabilities. When you shift toward a growth orientation, those ceilings begin to lift. A fixed mindset in professional life treats abilities as largely set. In leadership, it sounds like, "I'm not a natural leader," or "people like me don't rise to that level." In skill acquisition, it appears as, "I'm just not good at strategic thinking," or "I'll never be comfortable with public visibility." During career transitions, it shows up as, "This is as far as someone with my background can go." In innovation, it manifests as, "I'm an executor, not an idea person." These statements feel like accurate self-assessment. They quietly define what you attempt and what you decline. A growth orientation treats abilities as developable through focused effort, learning, and new experiences. The same situations are met with different internal language, such as, "I haven't led at that scale yet, but I can build the skills." Strategic thinking is something I can strengthen by practicing it in smaller settings first. My background gives me a particular lens. I can add other lenses. The difference is not naive optimism. It is a more accurate reading of how professional capability actually develops. People grow into larger roles by doing the work of larger roles, not by waiting until they already feel ready. This shift removes artificial ceilings because it changes what you notice and what you pursue. When you believe a quality can be developed, you pay attention to moments when it begins to appear. You interpret struggle as part of the process, rather than proof that the process is not for you. You become willing to enter rooms and take on projects where you are not yet the most capable person present. Over time, those choices compound into a different professional identity and trajectory. For practical ways support this expansion. The first is deliberate discomfort. Growth rarely happens in the zone where you already feel competent. Choose one recurring professional situation that carries mild to moderate stretch, like speaking in a larger forum, influencing without formal authority, or handling a negotiation you usually avoid. Commit to entering it with the explicit intention of practicing one new behavior. The discomfort is the signal that you are at the edge of current capability. Staying with it, rather than retreating, is what builds the new capacity. The second is actively seeking stretch challenges. Look at upcoming projects, initiatives, or role opportunities, and ask which one would require you to operate beyond your current comfort. Volunteer for the piece that feels slightly too big. If no obvious stretch exists in your current role, create one. Offer to lead a cross-functional discussion. Propose a small pilot that tests a new approach, or ask a senior colleague to shadow them in a strategic conversation. Stretch challenges do not need to be dramatic. They need to be regular enough that your professional identity expands through repeated exposure to new demands. The third is learning from diverse sources. Fixed mindsets often draw from a narrow set of models. People who look and operate similarly to you or within the same industry conventions. Growth expands the reference library. Seek out leaders and thinkers from different backgrounds, functions, and even industries. Read or listen to accounts of how people developed capabilities they once believed were out of reach. Have conversations with colleagues who have made unconventional transitions. The goal is not to copy their path. It is to see that paths exist beyond the ones you have assumed were available to someone like you. The fourth is long-term visioning without self-imposed limits. Most professionals carry an unspoken timeline and scope for their careers that was formed early and rarely revisited. Set aside time once a quarter to write a description of your professional life 5 to 10 years out that does not contain the usual qualifiers. What would you be doing if you allowed yourself to develop any capability required? What kind of impact would you have if you stopped editing the vision to fit an old story about your limits? Return to this vision regularly. It serves as a compass that makes current stretch choices feel purposeful rather than random. One story shows what becomes possible when these practices are applied to a long-held belief. It belongs to a mid-career operations specialist who had internalized the view that people who come from execution backgrounds don't move into true strategic leadership. She had watched others with different pedigrees advance, while she received consistent praise for delivery, but few invitations to shape direction. The belief felt confirmed by years of experience. Then she began a deliberate expansion practice. She chose one stretch challenge each quarter, first facilitating a strategy offsite for her team, then volunteering to represent operations in a cross-functional innovation group. She sought out 2 mentors from different functions and industries who had made similar transitions. She also wrote a 5-year vision without the usual, but I'm operations, not strategy clause. 2 years later, she was asked to lead a strategic initiative that combined operational depth with new market exploration. The breakthrough did not come from a single dramatic moment. It came from repeated choices to act as if the old ceiling was movable. You can apply these shifts to opportunities already in front of you. For the next project or conversation that matters, pause and ask, if I believe this capability could be developed through practice, what would I do differently here? Choose one deliberate discomfort or stretch element and commit to it. After the experience, extract what you learned about yourself rather than only what the outcome was. Over time, these small expansions change the larger map of what feels possible. Your current professional limits are largely self-imposed. They were formed from earlier experiences, feedback, and stories you absorbed about what someone with your background, personality, or role history can achieve. Because they were formed, they can be examined and rewritten. The growth orientation does not promise that every door will open. It promises that more doors become visible and reachable when you stop treating your current capabilities as the final boundary of what you can become. Chapter 6: The Execution: Converting Mental Breakthroughs into Consistent Professional Wins. You have done the inner work. You have named the barriers, loosened old beliefs, strengthened new ways of seeing yourself, built steadiness through setbacks, and expanded what feels possible. All of that matters. Yet, inner shifts only become real when they show up in the daily choices that shape your career. This chapter closes the gap between insight and outcome. It is about turning mental freedom into consistent professional wins through deliberate execution. The first shift is in how you set goals. Most professionals set outcome goals: the promotion, the revenue target, the completed project. These matter, but when goals are only about external results, they can reinforce old patterns of pressure and self-worth tied to achievement. Goals that reinforce the new identity ask a different question. Who am I becoming through this work? Instead of, I will secure the next level role, you might set, I will lead with greater clarity and advocate for my perspective in every strategic discussion this quarter. The outcome may still arrive. The process now strengthens the version of you who can hold larger responsibility without the old internal drag. Identity-based goals keep the focus on the daily behaviors that make success sustainable rather than fragile. Daily execution habits protect focus and momentum. After the inner work, many people still lose ground to scattered attention and reactive days. Protect the first 90 minutes of your focused work time for the highest leverage task, rather than email or meetings. End each day with a 2-minute review. What moved forward today? What small win can I acknowledge? What one thing will I protect tomorrow? These habits are simple. Their power comes from repetition. They create a rhythm that keeps the new professional identity alive in the middle of ordinary weeks, rather than only during big moments. Decision-making under uncertainty becomes easier when you carry the tools from earlier chapters. When information is incomplete and stakes feel high, the old mind often defaults to hesitation or overanalysis. The newer mind can ask, What would the version of me I am becoming do in this situation? You do not need perfect clarity. You need enough clarity to take one grounded step and gather more data. This might mean making the ask with the evidence you have, voicing the concern even if the wording is imperfect, or committing to a pilot rather than waiting for the perfect plan. Each decision made from the expanded identity rather than the old barrier builds evidence that reinforces the shift. Systems for tracking progress without perfectionism keep momentum alive. Many high achievers abandon tracking because it triggers the old voice that nothing is ever enough. A useful system focuses on consistency and learning rather than flawless outcomes. Keep a simple weekly log with 3 columns: actions taken that aligned with the new identity, lessons extracted from what did not go as planned, and one adjustment for the coming week. Review it briefly on Friday or Sunday. The purpose is not to grade yourself. It is to notice patterns, celebrate the quiet accumulation of aligned effort, and adjust without self-criticism. Over months, this log becomes a record of how far you have traveled from the old internal limits. Scaling success brings its own mental challenges. As wins accumulate and responsibility grows, new versions of old barriers can reappear. Imposter patterns may return at higher levels, saying, "Now they will really see I am not ready." Fear of increased visibility or failure can intensify because the stakes feel larger. The same tools apply, only now with greater awareness. When the new success triggers discomfort, label it quickly, return to your identity statement, and run a small experiment that tests the expanded version of yourself. The goal is not to eliminate all doubt. It is to prevent doubt from dictating your next choices. One story shows how these elements work together over time. It belongs to a specialist who had done deep mindset work around visibility and worth. She had loosened the belief that people who do the detailed work stay in the background. She began setting identity goals focused on contributing perspective in every meeting. She protected daily focus time and tracked her actions in a simple weekly log. When a stretch opportunity arrived that carried real visibility, she used the decision question from her expanded identity and chose to step forward rather than defer. The project succeeded. Recognition followed. 6 months later, she was offered a role with broader scope. The new level brought fresh waves of the old doubt. She met them with the same practices: labeling, identity statements, small experiments in advocacy, and honest weekly tracking. 2 years after beginning the inner work, she was leading a team and regularly shaping direction that affected hundreds of people. The advancement was measurable. The real change was that she no longer needed external validation to believe she belonged in the room. You can begin converting insight into results with a clear, repeatable framework. Each week, choose one identity-based goal that reflects the professional you are becoming. Protect daily time for the focused actions that support it. When decisions arise under uncertainty, ask what the expanded version of you would do, and take one grounded step. Track actions, lessons, and adjustments in a simple log. When success scales and new discomfort appears, return to the labeling and experimentation practices without self-judgment. This loop turns inner shifts into outer momentum. Mental freedom only becomes real through consistent execution. The insights you have gathered across these chapters are valuable. They become powerful only when they shape what you actually do on ordinary Tuesdays and in high-stakes moments. The professional who executes from the new identity does not become immune to doubt or difficulty. They simply move through both with greater steadiness and clearer direction. That is where the real wins accumulate, not in dramatic breakthroughs alone, but in the quiet, repeated choice to act as the person you have worked to become. Conclusion. You began in a familiar place, standing at the edge of what should have been possible, fully capable, yet held back by something you could not quite name. Over these chapters, you have traveled a clear path. You learned to see the hidden architecture of mental barriers. You practiced questioning and loosening the beliefs that no longer served you. You discovered how to rewire your inner landscape through focused attention and new patterns. You built steadiness so that setbacks became training rather than derailments. You expanded what you allowed yourself to reach for, and you turned those inner shifts into daily execution that produces real, measurable advancement. That journey belongs to you now. Simply by listening, reflecting, and staying with the process, you have already begun the work that most professionals never start. You have given yourself the rare gift of honest attention to the patterns that were quietly shaping your career. That attention is the first and most important act of leadership you can offer yourself. The professional life now available to you looks different from the one shaped by old limits. You move into rooms with greater presence, because you no longer carry the constant background negotiation of "I am not enough" or "I do not belong here." You advocate for your perspective and your worth with clarity rather than apology. Stretch opportunities no longer trigger the same reflexive hesitation. When success arrives, you can receive it without the old fear that it will soon be taken away or exposed as undeserved. Impact grows because your energy is no longer consumed by managing internal resistance. Fulfillment deepens because your daily work aligns more closely with the capabilities you have chosen to develop. Income and recognition have space to rise because you no longer unconsciously cap what you are willing to ask for or accept. And perhaps most important, you carry the freedom to keep growing. The old story that this is as far as someone like me can go has lost its grip. New chapters remain open because you have learned how to keep writing them. Picture yourself at the beginning of this audiobook, standing before what felt like a solid wall between you and the next level of your career. You could see the other side. You simply could not find the way through. Now, imagine that same scene with new eyes. The wall has not disappeared. It has become a door you know how to open. You still feel the pull of old patterns on difficult days. Yet, you also carry the tools to notice the pull, loosen its hold, and choose the next step anyway. That image holds the entire journey. The barriers were never as permanent as they appeared. The way forward was always inside your capacity to see them differently and act from that new seeing. Before this audiobook ends, choose one barrier that has surfaced most clearly during your time with this material. It might be the one that has cost you the most momentum, or the one that still tightens your chest when opportunity appears. Commit to applying one tool from these chapters to it this week. Not perfectly, not all at once. Simply begin. Name it. Question it. Run one small experiment. Track what you learn. The specific barrier does not matter as much as the decision to stop obeying it by default. You are no longer moving through your career with an invisible hand on the brake. The road ahead belongs to the version of you who has learned to see clearly, loosen what no longer serves, and build what does. Break the limits. Build the success. It begins with the next choice you make.